So think about all of the people who make your life possible. There's the principal at your child's school, the grocer who works at the local store, the air traffic controller who makes sure that you and tens of thousands of others get safely from one destination to the next. Well, those are just a few examples of the people featured in Peter Mansbridge's latest book, How Canada Works, the people who make our nation thrive. And Peter is in studio with us this morning. It's very strange to have you in this studio, so I get to welcome you. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. I passed this building for the last 40 years. I've never been in it. It's the first time I've been in it.
You should have tried.
I thought you had to be a rock star to come into this building,
well,
right?
You know, anyway, rock star news anyway. Your last book was called Extraordinary Canadians. You focused on some of the best and household names across this country. But this book focuses on the Canadians who make our country work by showing up to work every single day. And I love that you show us what we don't know about some of these jobs. You get the inside roles of like a funeral director, a window washer, a zookeeper even. How did you narrow it down to 28 jobs?
Well, it's funny. Mark Bulgich, who's the co-author of the book with me, and we've worked together for the last 40 or 50 years. We sat down and thought, what are the jobs we find fascinating out there that we know nothing about? And we came up with a list. So we started with the jobs, and then we fit the people to the jobs. But your opening line is right. When you say, think about the grocer and the funeral director and blah, blah, blah. The fact is, we don't normally think about them. We get focused on, the big names, the celebrities, the political leaders, the business leaders. That's what we focus on because there's a lot they do that has an impact on us, but nothing like these people. These people have an impact on our daily lives, and we often don't even realize it.
Well, we really get to know them in this book. The first profile in the book is actually a friend of yours, Wayne Munius, and he is the chief of the Neskantaga First Nation. And if viewers recognize that name, it's because it's been in the news many times. It's been under a boil water advisory for 30 years. So what do Canadians need to know about his story?
Well, he's the chief of that First Nation. And so he's faced with that dilemma all the time, just like his predecessors were. 30 years. I mean, imagine it, 30 years.
Yeah, he talks about taking calls about people who get sores on their body from the showers.
So they're trying to deal with it. So is government. They spent millions of dollars on a filtration plant there, and it's just still not working right. But he has all the other everyday problems that a chief in a remote, in his case, Northern Ontario region has. Everything, from normal band issues to children's suicide rates. I mean, he gets calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, not every day, thank gosh, but, more than we'd like to know about, where he gets a call from a mother who says, my son, my teenage son, has just committed suicide in his room. And the chief has to go over there and deal with it on every level, including bringing the body down. So he's dealing with a lot of things. His personal story is intriguing, and it's really the hook to how he has ended up doing what he does, because his main function for him is caring about others, and how he does that is quite something to read about.
When we meet somebody who has an unusual job, we often ask them, how did you get into that? People probably asked you this question a lot, and you got into yours in part because of aviation. You were announcing at an airport in Churchill, Manitoba, is that right?
Churchill, Manitoba.
And somebody heard you, offered you a job, and then years later, you're the chief correspondent for the National at CBC. You meet an air traffic controller, and I love how she got into her job, started with how she played on the soccer field.
Yeah. She realized, well, it's actually a friend of the family's realized, this is a person who's a great soccer player and is able to see the field, all over the field at the same time. So like a good hockey player, knows where everybody else is, to pass the ball or pass the puck, what have you. And he said, the kind of thing that you do is what I do. I'm an air traffic controller, and I'm trying to keep my mind on all these different aircraft and the vehicles that are on the field of the airport at the same time, knowing where everything is.
Stressful.
And that's kind of how it got started for her. Amber Dorian's her name in Halifax. And I've always been fascinated by aviation, but and wondering what goes on in that tower. What do they actually do in there? Well, it's a lot more complicated than I thought, and there's a lot weighing on the decisions that are made in there. We tend to thank the pilot when we get off the plane,
that's true.
right?
Yeah.
We walk off the plane, we say, thanks so much, great flight. Well, you know, perhaps we should start thinking about all the other people who are a part of that flight, and that includes air traffic controllers. If they didn't exist, it'd be chaos.
When I look at one of those towers next time at the airport, I'm going to think about Amber's story because it's very stressful. I want to ask you about this last job, funeral director. Most people in North America, we don't like to talk about death. We don't like to talk about funerals. But Luann Jones had made it her life's work. She talks about being a last responder. What did you learn from her?
Well, I learned that, and I love her turn of the phrase, because we were talking about first responders and her admiration for what first responders had done, especially through the pandemic. And then she looked at me and she said, "But Peter, you know, I'm not a first responder. I'm the last responder. But I have to treat that person and their family just as well as the first responders did in their cases." And that's her attitude. That's her thinking as she goes into her job, which is also one of those ones that many of us kind of shy away from. We don't want to know too much about what they actually do in those funeral homes. She tells it in a way that you want to know, and she's quite something.
It's a lot of honor and respect in that trade. Listen, the book is called How Canada Works, and it really gives you something to think about the next time you see those people in the grocery store, washing the windows, or working at the zoo. Peter, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, it's been a treat.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.